Morning, Spartans. Happy Monday, May 16th. Welcome back. I hope you had a good weekend. I hope you enjoyed your prom. You can see the agenda for today. We are talking about the rise of Hitler and Mussolini. And then you guys have some work time to finish up the chapter 28 reading guide. Questions 28 through 34. The homework assignment is on Stalin's Soviet Union. The entire chapter 28 reading guide is due tomorrow, so you want to make sure you get that done and get that turned in as we enter into the final 18 days of school. As you can see, the week here, tomorrow we'll talk Stalin. Tomorrow we'll have some review time. I will be in the building tomorrow, so if we have questions we can ask then. But we'll start reviewing for our exam on Unit 14, which will be World War I and the post-war problems, the rise of totalitarianism. That'll be on Wednesday. So just to recap here, we'll talk Mussolini and Hitler. You guys will have the rest of the day to read about Stalin, what he does in the Soviet Union tomorrow. We'll wrap up with Stalin. We'll review, get ready for our exam. Your exam will be on Wednesday. And then we'll get into the next unit, which will take us right up to the end of the year. Again, I don't think we'll have time for a cumulative final. I think it'll be a regular unit final. But with that in mind, let's start talking about Italy and Germany. We've been talking about this. We talked about this last week, right? We talked about the severe economic problems that occurred in post-World War I Europe. It was also in the United States. Anytime there is a society, a country, a group of people that do not have access to a job, do not have the means to provide for themselves or make their lives better, that country, that government, that group of people will experience some sort of political instability. And that's what goes on here. We've already talked about the upheaval in England and in France, in Eastern Europe. Italy, Germany, we'll go through some extreme changes. Germany goes through extreme changes because obviously they lost the war. Italy goes through extreme changes for a couple of reasons. They were on the winning side of World War I. However, they went to World War I and they joined the Allies solely for strategic advantage. They thought they were going to be the recipient of significant amounts of land, of wealth, and more or less returning Italy to some sort of Roman Empire glory. That wasn't the case. They didn't benefit after World War I the way that they had hoped, and this kind of left them in a little bit of disdain. This left them with a little bit of anger and anxiety for feeling left out, and what it would allow. What it allows for is a person like Benito Mussolini to come to power, because again, he can promise the Italian people who are going through an economic problem and now have been, spurned any sort of wealth, power, or growth after World War I, that they need to listen to him, and he's the one that can return them to, their former Roman glory. Italy is one of the first countries that will fall under this or implement this fascist system of government. Fascism, to just kind of understand this political theory, fascism is the belief that the country is worth more or more important rather than the individual. If you look at the fasces, the images on the right, you can see the original fasces symbol that was used throughout Rome, the Roman Empire. The power of its government is maintained by the strength of its people, and if the people are working together, the people are bound together, then the power of the nation is infinite. You can see fasces and U.S. government symbols. This is at the U.S. Capitol. It's in the House of Representatives. You can see it here, the Abraham Lincoln's memorial in Washington, D.C. All right. The fascist mentality that the country is worth more or is more valuable than the individual is more or less this rewriting of the social contract, right? There are problems that people are experiencing, problems we've already discussed, right? Economic problems. Benito Mussolini and the fascists, people like him, and in Spain, it's Francisco Franco. They convinced people that if they were to give up rights, if they were to give up independence to some extent and make the government more powerful, if they were to bind together and be this one cohesive group and listen to a strong government, they could solve these problems. Fascists believed, again, the nation was more important than the individual. What separated them from other tyrannical or oppressive governments like communism is they believed in personal property. They believed in the class system. And class system is kind of, an extension of fascism, right? One group is better than the individual. Certain groups with certain power are more important than certain groups with limited power, especially if you're going to get people to fall in line and follow orders. But it's all about empowering the government. If you allow the government to be empowered, then they supposedly will solve all of these problems. While Benito Mussolini and the fascists did believe in private business, private enterprise, private ownership, personal wealth, these things only were possible when it went along with what the government wanted. If the government needed to reform agriculture or transportation or military defense systems or insert the industry, if the government needed to manage it, then it was nationalized, which simply means that the government took it over. The government managed it as if it was its own business. Il Duce, as Benito Mussolini was often called, Il Duce, he often set up corporate estates, which basically meant that certain industries were just managed by the government, and government officials were more or less in charge of that industry. They had to meet with labor. They had to meet with the actual owner of the industry. They had to meet with all the stakeholders in that business and make sure everyone came to terms and into agreement on what was going to happen for not the betterment of the people, but for the betterment of the country. All right. Just like we talked about last week, Benito Mussolini does not come to power by some sort of coup d'etat. He comes to power with the rest of the fascist party. They are slowly elected into representative office. They gain numbers, and then they take control of the government. Once they win the majority, they literally start rewriting the rules, constitution for Italy, allowing them to be more empowered. And the people went along with this, again, because they made the promise that they were going to solve Italy's economic problems. The same is true with Germany, okay? Germany, probably the most extreme case after World War I. We've already talked about why they were destined for failure. We already talked about why World War I resulted in the start of World War II. Germany, after the abdication of the Kaiser, sets up a Weimar Republic. They set up a democratic system. But again, they have no colonies. They have no industry. They have no ability to pay back their debt. They borrow money, but they can't pay it back. They don't have any gold. They print off more money, so now they have inflation. They are a complete and total mess. And just like in Italy, and just like in France, and just like in England, charismatic people come to power. They promise people to solve the issue. If they give them the power to do so, they will make everything better. If they allow that social contract to be rewritten, they can solve their problems. It takes Hitler about 15, 16 years to do this. Initially, he tries to take over the government by coup d'etat. The beer hall push which happened in Munich in the fall of November 1923, somewhere right around there. I mean, literally him and his small political following of Nazis sought to overturn the government. They're arrested. He spends some time in jail. He writes his memoir, Mein Kampf, My Struggle. But it more or less lays out how he is going to solve Germany's problems. This conservative group is going to throw off the shackles of the Treaty of Versailles. They are going to expand back into the territories that they lost. They are going to recoup the resources that they need for their industries, and they're going to turn themselves back into another world power. the Third Reich, right? Their third reign as a world power. That's what he's going to do. But again, it's after he's released from jail, it's this slow democratic process. The Nazis will slowly be elected. The Brown Shirts will slowly be elected into their legislature. And once they have a majority and Hitler becomes chancellor, that's when the social contract gets rewritten, and they take over. That is what we needed to go through today. You have the rest of the chapter 28 reading guide for tomorrow, 28 through 34. Then this whole document is in. I'll wrap up the chapter tomorrow in class. And if you guys have any questions, I need to go through information since I've been gone, I can do that with you then. The rest of the time will be yours, so you're ready for your exam, which will be on Wednesday. So with that, I hope you're all doing well, and I will see you tomorrow in class. Go Spartans.